Kristi and Stacey, congratulations on Louder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristi, let's start with you. Talk a little bit about the genesis of the project and how you got these two all-stars, Stacey and Selena Gomez, on board as producers.
So while I would love to take full credit for the genesis of this project, I can't do that because Stacey and Selena are
Uh,
the genesis. And so Stacey can tell you about that, and I can tell you about when I joined
got it.
shortly.
Okay, so switch it around. Stacey, you go first.
Well, so as we mentioned in the documentary, Selena and I met during the 2020 election and remained friends. And she actually approached me with the idea of doing a series on protest music and on women in music. In particular, how women use their voices to organize, to call us into action. I was incredibly excited about one, the opportunity to tell the story, and of course, more importantly, to get to work with someone extraordinary like Selena Gomez. And we were able to find this remarkable director, Kristi Jacobson, to bring her on board to bring that to life. And it's a difficult topic because you're trying to tell so many stories. You are going to necessarily miss someone, miss a genre, miss a moment. And how do you convey the enormity of this project and this process by being both respectful of its scope, but intimate enough that people feel themselves in it. And that's what I think Louder does so very well and what Kristi was able to accomplish. So Celia and I had this idea, but she really, gave it shape and form, and we are grateful.
Yeah. So, Kristi, talk a little bit about, music has always been really important in civil rights movements. That's something the documentary really explores and does it in kind of a very specific way. Talk about why you think that is. Why is it that music is important in these sort of political movements?
I think what Louder does is talks about not only the importance of music, but the importance of the women who have written and performed the this music and this kind of protest or protest music. But it's not all protest music, right? Sometimes it's just a song about something really intimate and personal and vulnerable that hits a chord, right? So talking about a revolution by Tracy Chapman, is that did she first sing that at on a stage at a rally? No, but was it revolutionary and impactful? Yes. And so I think that I'm a filmmaker, so I obviously believe in the power of art and in storytelling to move people and hopefully to move people towards action and towards a better, more peaceful, just world. And music has the ability to tell a story in a really compact period of time, right? 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and it stays with you. And what Stacey said earlier that was like really a challenge in making this film is there are so many artists and so many songs and so many moments throughout history in all the movements, and we decided like this isn't going to be a comprehensive history lesson. This is going to be driven by some really extraordinary storytellers. And hopefully, we're going to also shine a light or tell you something about something you thought you knew, music you thought you knew, but you really didn't understand, or expose you to a new song, and really see that in a new context. Because today, I mean, every day where we women are under threat. And so we need to use our voices and amplify each other's voices.
One of the stories that I didn't really know about was the Loretta Lynn and the song "The Pill," which I think is really fascinating. And I think it kind of gets to a point, which is she had a certain stature that allowed her, maybe another artist who had this song wouldn't have been able to pull it off and to get it into the national conversation. So speak to that a little bit about how women who've had a certain platform have been able to, you use it to talk about some of these issues.
Well, I think there are two pieces to it. Yes, Loretta Lynn had this extraordinary status and platform and was able to bring what was often a whispered conversation in the corners to radios across the country. But she also had so much to lose. And I think sometimes because of status, certain artists are not given the credit they deserve for what they were willing to risk for the morals and the beliefs that they hold. I would put Beyonce in a similar category of risk versus reward. There's the presumption that there's nothing to lose. But when you challenge narratives, when you push people beyond their comfort zone, the revenge is not to buy your music, to cut you off. And we've seen women, we saw Linda Ronstadt do it when she reclaimed her Mexican American heritage. There is a risk that gets taken when you tell a story that others may not want to hear. And it is those women who are willing to risk their positionality because their intersectionality is so important to them. They live in this world with the rest of us, and they are unwilling to hide behind their privilege. And instead, they're willing to use that privilege to call the rest of us to action, to make the rest of us explore how complicated the world can be and create a bit of a safety zone for us. Because if Loretta Lynn can do it, if Linda Ronstadt can do it, if Beyonce can do it, then maybe in my small way, in my small part of the world, I can do something too. I may not be able to do everything everywhere at once, but I can do something somewhere soon. And that small thing happens because I saw this woman who I know can do so much risk herself so that I can also risk something too.
Yeah, it's interesting because even these people like Beyonce or Selena talks a little bit about how she was afraid when she, was vocal about being pro-choice, and I was thinking also when she talked about that about Taylor Swift recently when she
Yes.
endorsed Kamala Harris. I mean, she's one of the biggest celebrities in the world, but there was a risk to her, and she put herself out there. What do you think the having these women at the very pinnacle of their careers, um, being open about their politics and being open about sharing these feelings and opinions that they have, um, does for the kind of national conversation? Does it push it forward, or does it somehow complicate the political debate?
I can take that one. I I think it accomplishes both. I mean, the debate is already complicated, but sometimes it can be reduced to tropes and stereotypes. And having these women at these pinnacles of power step forward and say, "Me too, I'm a part of this conversation," forces us to consider the complexity and the scope of what's at stake. There is a comfort in being able to dismiss something. It's not about me or it's not relevant to my lived experience. And when someone in that posture says, yes, it does matter, when Selena Gomez says, my body is mine to make my choices with, when you have someone like Helen Reddy, who in that interview is basically met with this sort of soft chauvinism. Well, you're being aggressive. No, she's like, I'm being proud. There are ways we have to shape how we are viewed and seen and engage. And it doesn't complicate the moment. It simply articulates how complicated the moment already is. But
Mhm.
too often, women are reduced to having to live that complication without the amplifier that women in music have been able to give it.
Mm. You have so many great interviews in the documentary, Chaka Khan, Linda Ronstadt, her, Salt and Peppa. Was there, for, can you pull out one or two sort of insights or light bulb moments that you got from listening to all these different voices and making this for both of you?
I mean, I can share that. Well, there was no interview in which both myself, who was, I'm doing the interviews, and everyone in the room wasn't moved, didn't like leave that room a better person, didn't leave that room like ready to do more. So that was really across the board. I don't know if everybody knows how funny Melissa Etheridge is, but she is. um, but really the courage and the risk taking that each of these participants and artists took, not just when they wrote that song or performed that moment that we were talking about, but also to be here and now, to be here standing up among other women. So yeah, I feel like there was a moment when we interviewed the artist known as Her, and she was talking about I Can't Breathe, which she wrote in the summer of 2020, which was obviously an incredibly intense and vulnerable moment for her. Um, and she talked about that, and it's not in the film, but she performed the spoken word part of the song. And when I tell you, like, my like the core of me was like, I need to do any and everything that I can do to support not just her work, this person and her work and her voice, but also just thinking about like when you think about like who gets to tell the stories, right? Like our film is women telling the stories of women and primarily women of color telling their own stories. And that felt really important to be a part of.
Stacey, were there moments for you in these interviews that you were like, just it shed made brought a different light to something you maybe were thinking already?
So I was always aware of the punk movement, but not the role that women played in it. And
Mm,
that for me was revelatory, especially the moment where she talks about the ambitions that they had. And instead of being, threatened by not getting everything, her willingness to say, let's adapt and make it make sense. Let's fix this moment. We can't make you do what we want, but we can at least tell all the women to come to the front. And I think that moment is emblematic of part of the goal of this movie, which is to say you don't have to be a megastar to have an impact.
mm.
Sometimes it's that simple thing of seeing that woman who needs you, seeing this thing that needs to be said, and just taking that small step, bringing those girls to the front, writing down those songs and tearing off that sheet of paper, sharing your story is as transformative as, commanding an army of listeners to action. We all have to start somewhere. And I think coming from that punk scene, that for me was just this moment of, I began with, a Tracy Chapman or a Nina Simone or even a Dolly Parton. And it not occurred to me that that was also happening in the punk scene. And I love learning about that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, in the last few years, we've had the seismic change of the overturning of Roe. What do you think that has done to the women's movement and also to music and to the willingness of people to speak up and be a part of the political conversation?
I think it's drawn a through line that this has been and will be and has not stopped. That when Loretta Lynn spoke about the pill and when Billie Eilish is talking about reproductive freedom, when Megan the Stallion sits in the same space as Helen Reddy, it tells us that our movements must continue and that we can never be comfortable with a moment of progress because there will always be those who try to pull us back. But that this music and these stories and these women refuse to be drawn back, and we have to be called into action. I'm excited that this is coming out before not only the presidential election, which is seminal, but you've got at least 10 states that have questions of reproductive freedom on the ballot. Hopefully, this music will resonate in people's heads and they will remember that Loretta Lynn helped make sure the pill was popularized. We have the power to seize control, at least in some states, of our reproductive choice again. But more than anything, it reminds those who think that this is not their story or their fight that it affects us all. And because of music's universality, because of the universality of these women and these songs, my hope is that those who would exempt themselves from this conversation get, pulled in or nudged in to understand that this is about you too.
So finally, we're 2 weeks from an election, a little bit more. People are already voting in many states. What are you two feeling? You've been studying activism and the women and women's voices for the time you've been working on this documentary. Are you feeling a change? Are you feeling the moment, that this is going to be a moment where the country rises to this occasion, or not?
I'm gonna let Kristi go first on this one.
I mean, I'm a filmmaker living in Brooklyn, and I straddle like two worlds, one of despair and outrage, and one of hope and action. And I feel like that's kind of the world that I feel like we live in right now. And I am clinging on to hope. And honestly, like I this film feels like such an expression of of where I'm at, and I feel like where we're at, right? Like Rhiannon Giddens says she was the first interview we filmed, and she said, and I have it written down here. She said, "I'm sitting here living a pretty darn good life, and what do I owe my ancestors? What do I owe the women who came before me? I think I have a responsibility." And I feel that way. And also, we can't write the laws, but we can inspire the people who do. And I am hopeful that we as women and we as citizens, right, can use our voices in all the ways that we need to. And I'm going to now hand it over to Stacey, who is well versed in talking about this election.
I'm just gonna say what she said. She nailed it.
So you're
I'm not
feeling
going to
it.
die now, but when Stacey Abrams says what she said, it's kind of an exciting moment.
Stacey and Kristi, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. We hope everyone gets a chance to see Louder when it premieres tomorrow, October 17th.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Eric. We appreciate you.
Take care. Thanks for watching the You Interview channel. With over 3,000 original celebrity videos, we have one of the largest collections of celebrity interviews anywhere. So remember to like and comment on our videos and subscribe to the channel. If you want to get more involved, you can become a member of the channel. Membership has its perks. You can see exclusive celebrity videos and get the opportunity to ask our celebrity guests questions. We can't wait to hear from you.